everyone, welcome back to another monthly recap. You guys embraced our last month's recap with such enthusiasm and made it the most viewed recap in the series. And we want to sincerely thank you all for that. We have some pretty exciting stuff this month for you as well, so let's get right into it. Here are some of the highlights that we added into the DoesItPlay database in April of 2026. We have an interesting update on Kronos: The New Dawn. When this originally came out in 2025, we had some terrible disc builds to go alongside it. Our own report gave it an orange rating, which is just abysmal, quite frankly. But over in Japan, the game received an updated disc build for PS5, so we excitedly imported it for testing. And we are delighted to say that this updated disc build is a great improvement. Don't let the connect to the internet prompt scare you off at the start of the game. It can easily be skipped and you will find that nearly everything has been improved upon from the original disc build. Frame rates are much more consistent and almost never drop below 60 FPS, and the game doesn't suffer from constant potential soft locks anymore. It's not a flawless disc build though, but most of the issues are minor. A little minor ghosting and minor pop-in are pretty common to encounter in disc builds, so it's not that big of an issue. The only problem we actually feel is worth taking note of is that we did encounter one instance of an item being unobtainable after getting it from a box. Thankfully, it was an optional item, but it may be something to be wary of. Aside from that though, this is an extreme improvement over the previous disc build, and if you're a fan of the game, we highly recommend you importing it. We like to test smaller, unknown indie games a lot because, for one, it's great to highlight small independent creative works getting to the point where they can get a physical release of their games. And two, we want to make sure that they get it right. Smaller indie studios have a smaller chance of getting new prints going if a lot of issues are present in the current disc build. Thankfully, the awesome P-discs from developers Sometimes You are very good releases. In the first game, we only encountered an instance of an invisible platform in level 2-2. Just be sure to be careful around this one jump and you should be fine. Hell, there's a good chance you won't even notice it. The first game also has some issues with the D-pad not registering that well in menus and UI, so we recommend only using the analog stick for those. Aside from that, we have no other issues to report for the first game, and the second game is pretty much flawless. Aside from a little spelling mistake in the end credits, will he return, or it will be his last journey? All we can say for sure is that these are very good disc builds. One of our testers has recently been going through all the Resident Evil games on PS4, and because of them, we have nearly all of them in our database now. This month, they tackled Resident Evil 2 Remake Deluxe Edition, Resident Evil 3 Remake, and Resident Evil 7 Gold Edition. Remake 2 Deluxe is mostly just a great version of an already good disc build. The deluxe items are unfortunately just codes and are not on the disc, but they are just cosmetics at the end of the day. The only real issue in this disc build is that reflective surfaces can look pretty pixelated when reflecting a direct light source. But apart from that, no real issues were encountered. Resident Evil 3 Remake is pretty much more of the same. Again, some issues with reflections here. This is the same engine and a lot of the same assets were reused for 3, so that isn't too surprising. There was a strange moment though where all the grenades that were thrown turned into duds and just wouldn't explode. This fixed itself when reloading the save file though, but it was worth mentioning. But again, another really solid disc build. But then we get to Resident Evil 7 Gold Edition. The problem here isn't the main story, some minor lighting issues and reflections issues aside, those just seem to be a bit of an issue with the RE engine as a whole. No, the problem here is that Capcom infamously doesn't print the DLC on the disc for their Gold Editions and chooses to do download codes instead. Surprisingly though, that is not completely the case here. Banned Footage Volume 1 and 2 and the End of Zoe DLC are all on the disc here. But there is one piece of DLC missing. The Not a Hero DLC must be downloaded. This does make the Gold Edition worth owning over the regular edition because most of the DLC is present here, but we were so close to a complete release for this game and it's just such a shame it didn't quite reach the finish line. And since we're on Capcom, we might as well take a quick look at Pragmata, their newest release. It's always a little scary to look at the most recent release of a company. Besides their lackluster gold editions, Capcom has always had great standard disc builds, and we're always a little wary of them breaking that streak. Pragmata, though, is not the game that will break it. This is another excellent disc build from them with, again, some minor lighting issues, with shadows specifically in this case. We also did encounter one instance of Diane's mouth moving but not actually speaking. This only happens once though, and you can cheekily headcanon this as Diana just being Diana. Just another fantastic release from Capcom. We really hope that they can keep this streak going for as long as possible, because we for one are so thankful for their great physicals. If you want to see a bunch of this disc build in action, we actually have a whole uncommented gameplay video of this on our channel. Dark Souls Remastered has a bit of an interesting history on Switch 2. On the first firmware versions of the Switch 2, it would consistently crash when a save file was already present. Now this has been fixed in recent firmware updates, but the game is far from flawless on this hardware. The opening cutscene video file seems to be corrupted when played on Switch 2 and is bordering on being unwatchable. The same can be said for the credits, which again are basically unreadable now. It's also worth mentioning that the Switch version of Dark Souls Remastered has noticeably more compressed sound effects compared to the other console versions, which are not improved through backwards compatibility. It's always a little hard to tell what is and isn't intended when dealing with ragdoll physics, but we felt it was worth mentioning that the dead enemies seem to stick to the player a little more on Switch 2 compared to its predecessor, indicating there might be a piece of code that isn't being emulated properly through the backwards compatibility layer. Again, it's hard to fully tell. The gameplay is solid enough though. At the end of the day, we're gonna leave it up to you if this is how you want to experience the game. Let's look at a game that actually sees some improvements from being played on more powerful hardware though. We already had a test for Arkrunner on PS5, but recently one of our testers added a PS5 Pro report of the game to our database. Pretty much any and all framerate dips are completely resolved on the Pro, though some micro stuttering admittedly remains here, but it is much less severe than on base hardware. It's most noticeable when changing camera angles and moving to new areas. We usually get some pretty mixed results from PS5 Pro tests, so it's great to hear a case where the Pro actually seems to improve the gameplay instead of either playing exactly the same or in some cases making it an even worse experience. Fear the Spotlight on PS5 is the first game we've added to the database from Blumhouse Games. Blumhouse have made quite a name for themselves in the film space, even producing video game adaptations, but how good are they at adapting games to the physical medium? Well, we'd say they're pretty good at it if Fear the Spotlight is anything to go off of. We found the disc build to have some minor issues like some occasional janky physics on the main character's hair and some texture flickering on certain objects. Chapter 2 was the most problematic, but we use that term very lightly here. There was a moment where one of the enemies got stuck in a corner and we had a brief instance of the level disappearing and reappearing when crossing a certain hallway. But again, these are light and brief moments of jank. This is a great first go at a physical release, and we hope to see more solid releases from Blumhouse Games in the future. And let's end things off with a rare third-party game on Switch 2 that actually has a complete on-cartridge release, Marvel Cosmic Invasion. This is a pretty stellar cartridge build, all things considered. It runs at 60 FPS and no crashes occurred, which we did have on the Switch 1 version. Though you will see some minor slowdown here on occasion, but it's nothing too dramatic. There was an odd issue that happened once where we could not hurt enemies with a normal attack. The only way to really attack them was via a power attack, but again, this only occurred once. The Switch 2 card is overall a very good version of the game, but if you're looking for a smoother version with no minor stutters or a potential attack issue, we did also test the Series X version of the game and found it to be nearly flawless. Aside from some cutscene animations not being completely smooth, but that doesn't affect the gameplay in any way. As always, we get so many new reports to our database each and every month, and because of that, we don't have time to go over each and and every single one of them. So for full written reports on these games, as well as the ones we couldn't fit in this video, you can check out the database for yourself over at DoesItPlay.org. And if you don't want to miss any test or just simply want to support our video creation efforts, our Patreon is the best place to do that. Click the link in the description to learn more. Which of these games did you pick up, or are you planning to pick up now that you know a little bit more about their builds? Let us know in the comments. And whilst you're down there, let us also know which physical games releasing in May you would like to see us cover. See you in May, everyone. Bye bye.